All right, good. Got it.
We also alternate bottles. We did have a trial with fish using games. Plain dive. Here out of the bottle. So we went back to the bottle. Well, we have both, I guess.
I guess I'm an old guy. I can understand that. Not a problem.
Me too. We qualify. We're both old.
All right.
Well, there's plenty of seating.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there are other people. So
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I guess you can move the chairs around or the tables if you want, to get closer.
yes.
So I can get you the, so I'm down to
This is Bill.
So, yeah.
We're gonna Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I can probably do that.
All you have to do
This is pretty good.
is
Depending on the day.
All right.
I don't think so. You know, because it did conflict one time, when I was. You got some person here.
Yeah. We'll see.
That is normally sort of tough one.
All right.
No problem.
So TC,
No,
Yeah.
there are always all kinds of problems, but,
we're still gathering around here, but I do have the camera set up now. So I can get an audience picture, or if anybody asks a question.
Cool.
Could you guys hear people that were speaking in the room okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you might want to tell them that.
you know, I'm still.
What's that?
That they're being recorded.
Oh, right.
That's all right.
Well,
Can everybody in the room hear us? Well, Kirk?
I think so. We've got you amplified, and you ready to get started?
Sure.
TC, you ready?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Now you want to spotlight me. You can keep sharing. All right. There we go. Well, welcome everybody. This is a pretty amazing moment. This is the first time that we've met in person for a program meeting, and since February, I guess March of 2020. So this is a really special evening for us here. I'm joining you from the Corning American Legion. And just to show you real quick, I got a camera. And so we've got about 7 folks in the room. So everybody say hi.
Hi.
And I'm sure that others will join, or at least I hope they will. I expect they will. And so tonight is a hybrid meeting. Go ahead, go to the next slide, TC. Give me one more. So this is our first try at hybrid. Well, what does hybrid mean? Is hybrid means that we're presenting the meeting in person and also virtually. So we have an audience that's gathered on Zoom. We have an audience on Facebook on our Twin Tiers Five Rivers Facebook page. And you can participate in any of those ways. So give me the next slide. Here in the Legion, we have the Zoom session is projected up on the wall. It's about 8 feet big, so it's pretty big. And we are projecting the sound out. And as I showed you already, we have 2 different cameras, one for me and one on the audience. I think right now we didn't get the microphone set up. We had a few things that didn't go exactly as planned. But we'll use the microphone on this computer. If people in the room want to ask questions, I think the mic will pick you up. So just ask like normal. If folks are not, give me the next on Zoom, we'd ask that you mute your mics or TC will. Just so we don't disrupt our speaker. You have different choices about how you look at the Zoom session. We recommend side-by-side or speaker view. That's what we'll be using at TC's. So that will be recorded, and that's what's being streamed on Facebook. For those of you, it's really important that we participate in person, Zoom, and Facebook. So if you're on Zoom and you have a question, just take your mic off and mute or use the chat to ask a question. Either one will work. And be mindful that we have a lot of different ways that folks are participating. So just be mindful of that when you ask. But we really want to participate. We want to try to build this community in all these good ways. Next, Facebook Live. I love it if you just share your comments about the speaker, what you're hearing. That's a great way to interact on the Facebook. Feel free to ask questions, Bob, or maybe TC will pass those along. If they don't pass the question along right away, they're probably just waiting for the right time so they don't interrupt the speaker. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to have Josh start out with fly tying. Josh is joining us from Pittsburgh. I'll talk more about this in the announcement period, but we have programs that are set up that will be hybrid, the presenter will be here, and expect to find that in December. We'll be presenting from here. And what we'll be doing is because we can get extraordinary speakers like Josh, and we can remote them in. So we'll be doing that as kind of a experiment throughout the year. And just like last season when we got Kelly Gallup to present for us, Zoom allows us some really interesting potential to access literally any speaker in the planet. So Josh is going to tie. I'm going to do some announcements, and then Josh is going to present. So I think we're turning it over to Josh.
Beautiful. Thanks for having us, guys. I guess I'll do a little introduction and stuff later, but let's just tie a fly right off the bat here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome. So I guess I'm kind of known as a nymph fisherman. I like fishing nymph flies, but man, if I can catch fish on dries, I'd way rather. So tonight we're gonna tie a little dry fly. I was fishing with my friend Joe on Big Fishing Creek this summer, and we went through the brush and got to the stream, a real flat section of the water, and there was just fish rising like crazy. And immediately we noticed there was a big sulfur on the surface. So it was like that big yellow early summer sulfur, and these fish are just going crazy for it. So I put on a comparadun, threw some casts to these fish, and they just totally ignored me. I was like, what the heck is going on? Fish are rising. I mean, like steady risers. So I sit there and think a minute, like, what do I do? Change to a smaller sulfur pattern, throw it, maybe catch one, but the fish are just rising. Like they're riding so close that like my dry fly is moving from the wakes, it's crazy. So I kind of took a second, got close to the water and realized there was like 2 million, billion, bajillion blueing dollars on the surface. And that's what the fish are eating, and that's like staple blueing dollar fly. If I'm ever seeing fish rise and I can't catch them, blueing olive is like my first fly I really want to throw. So today we're gonna just tie a real simple little bluing olive that I caught fish that day, and it's caught me fish all over. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're gonna tie this on a size 20, and we're gonna use 8/0 olive done thread. Gonna start a little ways behind the eye. Take that thread to the bend. Hold on, let me grab it. And we're gonna use a little piece of kind of an olivey color pheasant tail. And I'm gonna grab 2 pieces. I do have a 6-month-old son, and you might hear him just kind of screaming in the background, having fun. So I already can hear him a bunch down there yelling. I'm just gonna grab 2 pieces, and I have the thicker butts up here and the tips. I'm gonna come back a little ways on the tips and cut them. So I'm tying in something a little more substantial. Go slightly forward and tie these guys in to the back. And I'm gonna go and build up just a small little taper of the body. Okay. That's too bright. And then I'm gonna really gently, because these things are so fragile here, take these fibers and just I pop one. Yeah, those pheasant tails. The longer you let pheasant tails sit in your house, especially when it's hot out and the sun's hitting them, the faster they kind of die off. Let me put in 2 fresh pieces here. Okay. Try this again. I learned a little trick too. Like I like tying kind of faster style, and the closer I have my bobbin to my fly, man, I can really spin that thread fast and kind of, instead of having like this long, it's kind of something I learned from a friend. Just kind of keep your bobbin close, and you can spin that sucker real fast. And all right, let's try this again here. Have these 2. 1, 2, 3. I'm just gonna get a couple wraps. Take my thread 3 times to lock those pieces in place. Okay. So the next thing I'm gonna grab is some CDC like a dun color, like a gray dun. So a way to kind of look at CDC, not all materials are created equal, and not all materials, some have better, higher quality. When you're looking at CDC, I'm really looking at making sure there's good barbels, and then there's like micro barbels on those barbels. And it's kind of hard to see here, this camera, but the more little fibers you have on each individual piece, the better it's going to help kind of float. A lot of the flies I tie, like shuttlecock style or F-fly, I use the tips. I've had a lot of like this rear section that I don't know what to do with. So this is kind of a cool way to use the rear part of these the feathers for this fly. So I'm going to take, first actually, getting ahead of myself. I'm going to put a little bit of this yarn. It's kind of like a high vis yarn, and this will help us see that fly because it's pretty small. I'm going to take a little bit of this. This is what we use for like kind of hot spots on flies, or like tag flies. What we're going to do is wrap it around the thread and then just place it right on the top of the shank with just a couple wraps to lock that in place. Okay, then I'm going to grab that CDC, and what I did there was I got rid of like the kind of fluffy stuff right at the very bottom. I'm going to grab a pretty nice clump of it and remove those little nasty butts, little curly pieces. And what I'm going to do is kind of just place this real close to the eye and with the tips to the rear of the fly. Just tie it in with a couple wraps. And then I'm going to get that feather, kind of duplicate the amount of fibers I grabbed, pull them off the stem, do the same thing, remove those curly pieces, and tie it in on the opposite side towards myself. A couple wraps will lock that stuff in place. And what you can do here is come in, kind of cut those little skinny pieces off the front. And the more CDC you put on this, the better it's going to float, the higher it's going to float. But I like this one, just a little sparse, nice little light wire hook, small little fly. And I'm going to kind of tease both sides out a little bit so they sit like, like a little, just kind of on both sides of the shank. Going to spin this little bit of yarn here and roll it over kind of like a wing case. And do 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps. So one thing that you can do here is you can lift this up, put a wrap or two over top, and cut this maybe like a 1 or 2 millimeters up, and that'll give you a little bit of a post almost, so you can see that. But this fly's pretty bulky actually. I'm just going to cut it pretty close and do a little hand whip finish here. And what we're going to do is kind of tidy up those wings. They're way too long. And what I found out is just kind of lift them straight up. I kind of know how long I want them. And then you can just use your thumb and nail, kind of just pull them off. You can work them out, and that kind of makes just a nice little dry fly. It has really soft when it hits the water. Man, fish it's hard for them to resist little CDC flies. And that little bit of orange, I don't know how much it picks up on the camera, but that helps, see it too. But pretty simple, but it's definitely an effective fly. Any questions on anything?
Yeah, Josh, when you fish that, do you feel you have to grease the line, or does it float pretty well just with that amount of CDC?
No, I have to put something on it usually, or it'll float until that first fish eats it. Of course, once that goes under, the CDC gets pretty mucky pretty quick. For like frog's fanny powder with a brush is what I like to use on any CDC once it has gotten wet. There's stuff like TNC Dry Magic. And there's some other stuff you could put on the fly, and greasing the leader will absolutely help to keep that fly riding high. Monofilament too, mono leaders will help kind of keep that fly high too. Yeah. Once a little trick I found, whenever you're powdering your fly, the shake container isn't, my favorite to use. It'd be more with like a brush applicator. And what I like to do is smash that brush so the fibers are all kind of crazy. It'd be like a paintbrush you want to throw away. That's how it should look. Because then when you rub, kind of brush that desiccant on that fly, it really gets into all the fibers. But yeah, cool. Any other
Thanks.
questions?
Not right now.
I've got the mic open so you can ask questions. Anybody? So Josh, do you, so this pattern you said is a blue wing olive. Do you use it for other mayfly hatches?
Yeah, sure. You can do it larger sizes and different colors, and kind of, maybe make the body a little thicker. But usually with that little bit of CDC, kind of a smaller fly. Another good thing it's good for is tricos too. It makes it kind of a nice trico fly. But when fish are eating small bugs, it's hard for them to resist CDC. When we were in the European areas like the Czech Republic and Poland and stuff, we really learned how many people over there just fish those CDC flies, those picky fish. We've started fishing here in the United States a lot, and yeah, it's definitely a good fly. Cool. Any other questions?
No, nothing right now.
Awesome.
So do we're going back to club announcements? Cool.
Yes.
TC, can you cue the presentation? There we go. Cool. There we go. Hey, so welcome everybody. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 of us here at the American Legion. I see we have 9 on Facebook and 7 on Zoom. So that's interesting. Got them spread out. I just want to say that the club is doing all we can to keep going and keep safe during this crazy time. What I mentioned at the beginning is our intention is that all the program meetings this season will be hybrid. And that means that it will be here at the Legion and on Zoom and on Facebook. Our main way of communicating is through the email distribution list through MailChimp and the Facebook page. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Go ahead to the next slide. Hybrid is our hope to allow everybody to participate in a safe way. And we realize that some of our members are vulnerable and going out is not safe. So we have the virtual options. As I mentioned before, our speakers, we're going to seek to have a mix of in-person and remote speakers. And just one of the benefits of being hybrid is if winter weather, if there's the storm of the century, what we'll do is we may cancel the in-person meeting and we'll just meet virtually. So that allows us that option. If something batshit crazy goes happening with COVID and we have to do something, we're just going to keep doing virtual. So The board of directors has used the term, we want to COVID-proof our operation. That's probably a little more ambitious than we can be around the unpredictability of COVID. Go ahead, next slide. I just want to share with you that we're meeting here in Barrett Hall of the Corning American Legion. We're disappointed that the Big Flats Community Center, when they reopened, they basically, the rates went up by an order of 5. And like a nightly rate went from $15 to $120, I think. So we decided to come here. One of the reasons is it's got a lot of room. And another is you can get a beer. And the other is that they're doing this on a donation basis. So we've always been generous with the Legion, and we're really looking forward to meeting here. There are COVID protocols in place. Go ahead, next slide, TC. Part of what we're trying to do is to meet the requirements of FFI along with the venue and county and CDC. And we're not in a fly fishing club because we're really experts at public health. So we're just doing the best we can to meet all these different requirements. So if you come here, you're welcome. We ask that you be fully vaccinated. Don't be showing signs of symptoms. Wear a mask when you're inside. FFI asks that we all sign a hold harmless agreement so we all know what we're in for. Okay, next slide. Our virtual connections, our intention is to stay with Zoom and Facebook Live for all the meetings. I talked about the rest of this already, so let's go to the next slide. I just want to take a moment to remind you that we have 2 Facebook presence. One is the page and one is called the group. The page is where we share. This live stream initiates from the Facebook page. We set this up last fall, and it's for official club announcements. It's kind of our public facing, if you will. It's more or less like a website. The group is Twin Tiers 5 Rivers FFI, so its name is slightly different. But the intention there is a sharing forum. It's our social platform. So our hope is that we're interacting between each other. What's going on in fishing, just sharing some photos, the fun we're having, time flies, that kind of thing. Keep in mind that both of these Facebook entities are open to members and non-members. So when you're communicating on the group, realize that not all those are FFI members. All right, but make sure that you're connected to both the group and the page. All the program meetings and all the fly tying events are all kept on our YouTube channel. You should check that out. If you can see recordings ever since we started it with the pandemic, and also the video of tonight's presentation will be on our Facebook page. So that's really cool if you want to go back and spend some time with the steps on Josh's fly. A lot of people do that, or if there's a detail you missed. Furthermore, is if you happen to miss a meeting, no biggie, you can go and watch it later. All right, lastly, I think we've got a lot of really exciting plans underway for the upcoming season. Bob Carlson is working on monthly programs. We'll be doing the Master Fly Tying series that will start in January and go through March, and Matt Collins is organizing that. It will be for club members. It will be a virtual demonstration. There will be a beginner fly tying lessons. Those are being planned. That's misspelled there, but Bill will get it right when we're doing it. But there'll be beginner fly tying that'll start in January. We're planning a virtual fundraiser and sale. One of the things that I'll share with you is that our club library, we have decided that it's not getting much use, so we're going to sell it. And so there's some incredible books in the club library. And right now, Bob Walker is working on a plan to get some money out of that. So we're planning a fly fishing school in the spring. We don't think we can do an academy at a public school like we've done in the past. So we're planning on a fishing school that's going to be focused on catching fish, and that's going to be at the Bill Wirtz Pond. And then lastly, we've got a lot of exciting planning underway to build from what we did this last year from the Women Connects effort, which is engaging women into fly fishing. And there's a lot of dialogue going on. Expect to hear more. Cool. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob Carlson, who's going to introduce Josh. Bob?
Sorry, I had it on mute. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah. Your video's off, buddy.
Yep. Sorry. Give me 1 second. Is it coming up? Hang on a second.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Here we go. Sorry about that. So hello, everyone. Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce Josh Miller. I think many of you are familiar with Josh. He has been a member of the USA fly fishing team. He's also coached the United States youth team fly fishing. And he's also an Orvis and Fulling Mill signature fly designer. He currently runs Trout guide services. So make sure you look those guys up if you want to learn more about fly fishing or go on a trip either in Pennsylvania for stream trout or steelhead fishing on the Erie Tribs. I know he does both of those and he does it very well. And tonight, Josh is going to be talking about PA trout fly fishing destinations. I know Josh has been fishing and guiding the hills and mountains of PA for most of his life, and he knows the waters very well. So I think this is going to be a very interesting talk. So I'll turn it over to Josh.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here. It's awesome to have this group, see this group again. Bob and all the group is so friendly with me and just so cool, man. It's nice to see a fishing chapter just keep doing things through all these crazy times. It's great. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about my home state of Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised, growing up fishing these crazy creeks here in PA, catching trout. I love it. But so it's been a cool year. I had a son this year. He's 6 months old. Life's going fast. Just bought my first house in the past. Well, I'm actually buying my first house on Monday, so a little stressed out. Yeah, I'm sure you can feel me there. But it's good. Been traveling a bit this year, doing some clinics around the country. Was in Oklahoma a week or two ago, teaching some urine nymphing clinics down there. Did a clinic in Connecticut recently, and on track to do whole bunch next year. Man, I'd love to do one in New York, but maybe up in north central Pennsylvania would be a good place to do one too. But yeah, life's been good. all's good over here. Working on. I got the call today about the World Championship for coaching with the youth. Hopefully next year in Italy, so that's kind of cool. So the life is moving on. Hopefully things get back to normal a little bit, and we start catching fish and traveling and start teaching these kids again. You know, it's great. Did a couple clinics with the youth, one in Montana and North Carolina. Man, I swear there's one other one, but yeah, so it's been good. Fishing's been good this year. A lot more anglers than normal, but yeah, it's great to be out. It's nice to see the growth in the sport, and it's been good. So, today I'm going to talk about, like I said, my home state of Pennsylvania. It's a bittersweet thing, man, to share the love of the places that you fish, you know. But I'm going to share a couple of the spots and just a couple rivers and kind of go over, you know, just a little overview of how I fish them a little bit and, you know, what's going on, some access points, and, you know, nothing too crazy tonight. Just a couple key streams here in PA. So I like it when people ask questions and are involved. So please feel free to yell out or call out or whatever at any moment. And Bob and the guys will hopefully push your questions to me, because I'm a very one-track minded person. I can't do this very well. So, you know, I can only think of one thing at a time. So, so yeah, let me get my presentation here. 1 second, please. So, share screen. Oh, I guess you gotta, there we go. Can I share my screen? Host disabled from sharing screen. Cool. Thank you, guys. Awesome. Got a little presentation here. Play slideshow. Cool. Can I have a thumbs up if we can see it all good? Beautiful. Fly fishing, Pennsylvania, the motherland. Man, I fish a lot of places. I'm blessed to fish so many states. I won't even say how many, but a lot of rivers and streams. And, you know, Pennsylvania holds up with some of the best in the world for sure. We have some awesome fishing here in PA. We're blessed with, I think it's like 15,000 miles of like fishable trout streams. Doesn't mean they're all public, but, you know, it's a lot of water to fish, a lot of opportunity, a lot of sneaky fish people, you know, might neglect or not think about. A lot of limestone springs and this and that, which we'll talk about. But it's a cool state to come to for sure. You know, why fish in Pennsylvania? Yeah. So Pennsylvania has crazy stocking. I think there's stock like 4 million trout in PA. You know, that gives us an opportunity to catch fish in streams that, you know, might not hold fish generally, or those stock fish sometimes give a jump start to fisheries that might hold wild fish, but there hasn't been any introduction of any trout. So, you know, sometimes stocking does give the fish a stronghold in areas to be able to, you know, grasp that spot. But Pennsylvania has some pretty interesting regulations. They have like these keystone select waters, where they stock big fish. They have, you know, wild trout management areas, wilderness areas. They designate and electroshock a lot of streams, so we can have a designation on the streams. We have things called Class A, B, C, D, which gives us, like, Class A is the highest density of trout that their state gives us. It's kind of like out west, they call it like gold standard or blue ribbon, or, you know, that's our highest standard of trout. And we have a lot of Class A streams, you know, and that's kind of a cool way to find your next spot too, you know, instead of fishing the big name streams, maybe think of, you know, looking at these electroshocking reports. That's kind of how I did it from the beginning. You know, a lot of years ago, I used to actually talk with commissioners and, you know, call the state and ask, like, can I have reports on these fisheries? Like, can I literally look at the data of, you know, fish per mile, like sizes, and like, you know, that's kind of how I started figuring out where to fish. Kind of crazy. But we also have like fingerling stocking here in Pennsylvania, so that also gives rivers a jump start. Like, I think the Clarion gives fingerlings, Stony Creek River, the Little Juniata actually got fingerling stocking for a long time. I'm not sure if they still do. I don't think so, but I think the Allegheny River might still, and the Clioc does. But yeah, we have a lot of pretty cool things here in Pennsylvania going for us. This is a picture of kind of our fishable water I took from the fishing game. So you can see, I think the green is class A and the blue is maybe wilderness, or I don't remember exactly, but you see there's a lot of opportunity here. I'm in Allegheny County and they're in the Pittsburgh area, and you see there's not very much. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4. So most of my guiding and fishing is done in that central part of the state, and that's where I kind of spend my time. There's just a lot more opportunity for both stock and wild fish, and just good year-round-ish fisheries. So maps like this give us, you see that central part towards Potter, and that's towards you guys, huh? You guys are up in the kind of just on the other side of Potter County, if I remember correctly. But I mean, there's just so many fish. But if you think of it this way too, just at that line of Pennsylvania, it doesn't stop. There's still goes into New York or down into Maryland too. That same limestone belt that goes down through like Chambersburg and Bedford. Oh, maybe I won't say too much. We're just talking about Pennsylvania here. Okay, cool. So in Pennsylvania, we have limestone streams, we have spring creeks, we have freestone streams, we got a few tailwaters, we have big river opportunities. Like the Delaware and the Yaak River feels like we're out west, or like on this crazy big, drift boat kind of stream. We have a lot of things here in PA to fish, a lot of different size streams. Most of our streams kind of are on the moderate, smaller side, I'd say, especially if you come from out west. But that's a little spring creek here. I love fishing these tiny little things.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
Could you go back to that PEA screen real quick?
Sure.
There was one question that came in.
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
so. I think it's I think it's for someone that hasn't fished a lot of PA. And the question is there is there private water in PA? And maybe another way to answer it is can you talk a little bit about how much public water is in PA?
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure on all the laws to a T, but there's state land. There's land that Pennsylvania will like purchase for fishing access. I think, and someone could tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that they allow the state like pays people almost like a right of way tax. They'll pay their taxes and stuff where you can fish on people's property. Like it'll say like private, but fishing permitted or walk in only. So there is stuff like that. And we do have a law in Pennsylvania. It's called the high watermark law, and that's only on navigable streams. And it's kind of like a gray thing. So, if there's posted signs, in Pennsylvania, you knock, you respect landowners no matter what. Even if it is legal or whatever, you still always respect. That's the best way to be, but I knock on doors all the time, not all the time, but I used to knock on doors a ton. And, when you tell people you're fly fishing, you know how it is. A lot of times they let you fish. So, Pennsylvania does have, so say like Spring Creek, for example, I think most of it's public. There's a few private areas on it. But we do have a lot of open fishing water. Pennsylvania is like one of those older states in a way where there is a lot of privately owned land in PA. There is a lot of, old deeds or whatever it's called. But yeah, I still say there's tons of fishing opportunities for sure. And, I always was kind of someone, I don't want to say my opinions too much, but, I always kind of thought private water, I was like, that's kind of lame or whatever. But, you go to Europe and it's all private. As someone that lives here and just looks at that map and says like, there's a lot of that is fishable like water. We're very blessed to have what we have, and sometimes
I'd say most of it is probably.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot, and not swaying either way for private, but sometimes that little parcel of land in the middle is just a sanctuary for fish to grow and not be fished for, and not people unknowingly walk on reds and stuff, so sometimes those little things aren't a bad thing for fish just to have a safe area, so it's kind of this weird balance, but I don't want to talk about that too much. Any other questions?
Yeah, he clarified his question. Is there any paid for private access for the day?
There's some. I don't think there's a ton in PA that I know of. There's a couple places I know, like there's a couple clubs and stuff, but I don't think PA is a big kind of club water state that I'm aware of.
Yep.
Cool. Sorry, I get so. You'll see. I just have so much emotions with fishing. I just love it so much. So please forgive me if I get too deep on anything, just because I live for talking fishing. My wife hates it, you know. Literally, I'll get off. I'll finish this meeting, and I'll just be on phone calls the rest of the night talking about fishing with somebody. You know, I live it too much. So sorry. All right, moving
No
forward.
problem.
Spring creeks. We have freestones. We got like this little brook trout stream is kind of cool. We fish with Uncle Humphreys once in a while, teaching the U.S. youth team. Get to see him do some little tight brook trout stream fishing. This is a little tributary to Big Fishing Creek. Pretty awesome Class A stream. But in Pennsylvania, we have these big tailwaters like the Delaware River. Catch some really nice fish on those big rivers as well. So in Pennsylvania, kind of the gear that I like to fish, when I'm subsurface fishing, I'll fish usually a 10-foot or longer rod between a 2, 3, and 4 weight, kind of becoming a little bit more of the standard for nymph fishing, I kind of would think a little bit. And for dry fly fishing, I like fishing 9 and 10-foot rods, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 weight, depending on, if I'm on a boat or there's wind or whatever. That's kind of like my standard, I would say, when I'm fishing, not getting too deep into gear or anything. So, power bait, that's the wrong slide. Sorry about that. So nymph flies. Sorry, wrong presentation. So nymph, I like to keep it simple when I'm nymph fishing. I'm working. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I'm kind of working on my first book right now. It is a mountain. I'll tell you what, it's a crazy thing to kind of do, but I'm very excited. I'm honored and blessed to be able to do that. But my kind of thought process with my fishing and teaching the youth, young anglers, adult anglers, in between, doesn't matter. It's just to keep things very simple. A simple approach. Just, I think we can overthink. I mean, we've all heard this. We can overthink things, and I just like to keep a simple approach to everything. Because if I have too many things I'm thinking about, like I said, remember the belly and the head thing? I can't do 2 things at once. So, simple flies. Waltz worm flies is definitely like a staple. Pheasant tails, Frenchy flies, some attractor flies like the rainbow warriors and hot spots and stuff. Past rubber legs is a good fly when I'm fishing, maybe lesser dense like trout population streams and kind of going for bigger fish. Past rubber legs is a stonefly kind of replication if people don't realize that. Like even like a woolly bugger with rubber legs is kind of like a stonefly too. And a blue-winged olive nymphs. Man, I love a blue-winged olive. Waltz worms, scud pattern, sowbug, caddis, and blue-winged olive, man, looks like a midge or a little dark phased nymph. Man, that's just 2 flies you can't beat anywhere.
Josh, question just came in. What
Yeah.
size, what weight beads are you using? And are they mostly tungsten?
I use mostly tungsten beads. Sometimes I'll use brass, and sometimes I'll use no bead too. Sometimes I like fishing, But mostly, it's a hard question to answer, but in that 3 millimeter, 2.8, 2.5, I usually fish a 1.5, or my range is, I should say, not usually, but my range is 1.5 to about 4 millimeter. So it kind of gives me a nice range of beads to be able to fish the situation the fish are calling for. So dry flies, sorry, I forgot to change the still some bead heads there, but dry flies. If I'm fishing dries, I like to fish, caddis fly, man. Like caddis flies are just a staple for me in that tan, olive, and sometimes a black caddis too. That early season grandum hatch is awesome. That summertime waning tan caddis in Pennsylvania, it's like you can always throw like a size 16 or 18 tan caddis and catch a fish. That's just a good staple fly to have. And just maybe some different style, like a high riding, big hackled fly sometimes is awesome, or like a one that kind of sits in the surface when fish are a little bit more wary to come to the surface. Cdc Blue and Olive. That's my second fly, like kind of that fly that we just tied. And I kind of share too. An F fly or a shuttlecock is another 2 ways to tie a blue and olive pattern. And one kind of sits deeper in the film. That shuttlecock, what it will look like is the body's underwater and the wing is CDC coming out the front of the hook, kind of like a comparadun. And it will sit with its foot kind of deeper in the water, and it's just that CDC is for us to see sticking out of the water. And man, those fish, it's just hard to refuse a bug like that. Adams flies are, nice searching fly, especially when you're fishing brook trout or humpies, anything like that. And comparadun style flies. I don't fish a lot of heavy hackle flies anymore. I think comparadun style fly just looks buggy, sits in the water nice, and fish like it. It's just my approach to patterns. Any questions? Sorry, I don't want to go too long on this stuff, but oh, there's a little bug there, man. I love fishing anything dry flies when you can. And Pennsylvania has tons of hatches. So the first river we're gonna kind of overview really quickly is the Little Juniata, and this is a gem of Pennsylvania, man. This is a beautiful place. It has like, I don't know, maybe around 30 miles of fishable water, and it's known for its arches. So like someone will post a picture and they're like, "Oh, you fished the train bridge there." I'm like, "Well, there's like 9,000 of them. Which one?" There's so many arches on this river, so it's kind of known by that. It starts as more of a freestone stream in the Altoona, central Pennsylvania area, kind of goes for a little ways, and then it turns southeast through kind of like a narrowish area from Tyrone to the mouth. So kind of call it like kind of three areas. From Tyrone upstream is the headwaters, kind of, and then from Tyrone to Spruce Creek will be kind of the first stretch. And we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. But it has I think it's like 12 miles of catch and release, all tackle, I think it is. And it's just a nice river. It's kind of like our wild river of PA in a sense. It was stocked heavily with fingerlings for a lot of years. Has its ups and downs. It had a paper factory on it that put in pollution a couple times, or once or twice, I'm not sure. But it has its ups and downs, the river, but it's a great place. It's a beautiful spot. It always has that like that green color, we call it the Pennsylvania green. I love that. If I'm fishing the Little J, it's hard to beat any fly with chartreuse. If it ain't chartreuse, it ain't no use. Come on now. But chartreuse flies are definitely, anything with that, a little green weenie in the summertime can really crush fish there. There's a lot of granums on that river, but just, green. It's definitely a good fly there. And there we go. There's that first season early hatch. It gets fish looking up the granums, and they come in hordes, man. It's a pretty crazy river for the granums. So when you look at a good stream in Pennsylvania, and the few I'm going to talk about today, and there's a ton of them, but the few I'm going to talk about have good headwaters. And that's an important thing for a lot of reasons. For conservation, for having water, out west kind of suffers from irrigation and stuff too. And you know how much groundwater we take from farming or from, bottling water too. But these streams that are really good in PA, the bigger ones, have good headwaters. I think it had, I don't know exactly how many tributaries it has, but it has a nice few Class A streams that dump into the Little J. And it has good fish too, it has some nice fish on that river. It has both wild, its majority would be those fingerling brown trout that have grown up and look like wild fish. And there is wild fish, wild brown trout on the river, and there is some wild rainbow trout. And you will catch a random brook trout that has come in from some of the tributaries and some stockfish too. But it is just a pleasant river. So this is kind of the upper end of the river, has these weird limestone edges. I've noticed those weird big flat slate pieces. The fish don't seem to sit in numbers anywhere I fish, really. I kind of look for those gravel areas, but the upper river is nice to fish. And then as you go down, I think this is near like the Greer School area. Has some nice flats, some good dry fly areas there as well. And then you go down river to a place called Spruce Creek. So this is kind of where the river changes in a sense. It's going to go through a little tighter stretch down there. And someone asked about like a fishing club. This is an area where there is a fishing club in that area. You are allowed to access the stream, but I kind of don't fish that area. Just leave it alone, whatever. But yeah, so it changes because a stream called Spruce Creek enters that puts in some volume of water. and there's some more springs in that area too. And it's kind of nice pocket stretch. Down a little lower is where you kind of can access some of the gorge. It's called the Rothrock State Forest. Someone asked about public land. It's a lot of nice public land here. And this river is navigable from above Tyrone a little bit. I think it's in the Tipton area down to the mouth. So you are allowed to access most of the river. But like I said, if there's posted, you just respect it. You know what I mean? Always respect. But yeah, it's nice. It does give you, it does put up some nice fish too. But it does give you the ability to float this river. We don't really offer too much guide trips with floating. Once in a while, I will do some floating guiding, but it is, has that potential to. There's a boat launch up in Tyrone, but most of the people are floating it from Spruce Creek to the mouth, which is Route 305 in Petersburg, St. Petersburg, I think it is. But yeah, so the lower end of the river kind of flattens out, gets a little bigger. Average size of fish is a little bigger. And yeah, it kind of has a nice couple runs before it goes into the Juniata. I think it's the Franks down there and the big Juniata meet and create the big Juniata or something. I don't know exactly, but it gets pretty big down low and it's pretty awesome. And that's kind of overview of Little J. Any questions?
So, Josh, from the meeting hall here, have anybody else fished a Little J? It's an amazing fishery. You want to talk more, Josh, about the fingerling stocking and the wild brown trout there? It's like an amazing place because the fish that you catch, there's a lot of wild fish in that stream. You want to talk more about that?
Sure. It's, those fish sit where they should be. The fish are in those runs that we want them to be in. They're in that skinny water where we like them to be in. They eat flies, they get picky, they're technical at times. Sometimes they're just ruthless at times and they eat any presentation coming through. So it gives you kind of overall a nice experience. And yeah, there's a lot of fish per mile. Sometimes you can catch in nice numbers of fish. That's not always what it's about, but it does give you the opportunity to catch fair numbers of trout. But yeah, it's a great fishery. They had, I'm not sure if they still fingerling stock. I've said that a few times, but they did for a good few years to kind of kickstart the river back. And yeah, it has a lot of potential for a lot of nice fish for sure. And I can't say majority, but I do at least a third of my guiding on that river. It's my closest ish to home. It's about 2 hours and a couple change from Pittsburgh. A little closer, I think, to the Harrisburg, maybe 50 minutes from State College. So it kind of has a nice centralized river there for me. But yeah, I love that river. Any other questions?
It's just a comment. It's an excellent big river stream. If you've not fished it, I'd really encourage you to fish it. The Little J has a great story behind it because it was 30 years ago, it was polluted by paper mills and it's just fully recovered. Maybe not fully, I don't know, but it has great sulfur hatch. There's a good mix of water that is accessible. There's easy to walk in, but the Rothrock area, you can hike in probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles up the canyon.
I would say it's a good 1.5 miles until you reach that club water. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can get away from people and a pretty neat place to fish. And what's the name of the canyon? I've forgotten.
We just call it the gorge.
Yeah, the gorge. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's great, man. There's tons of public access, and you'll see there's kind of those, just gravel pull-offs all along, especially the lower end and the middle end too. There's just gravel pull-offs, and there'll be a lot of the state signs that just say fishing access. And we have another thing. There's like a little fish, kind of a little cutout of a trout or a fish that the state puts on trees to kind of give you like the land boundary too, so you are legally where you should be. So it's kind of nice. You get plenty of water, plenty of way to get away from fish. But I will say it does get technical. It's known for that Granum hatch and that sulfur hatch. That's kind of the two big hatches that people go to Little J for. I have been seeing a couple green drakes too on the lower end of the river, which is kind of cool last few years. But yeah.
Maybe just another comment is the rail line that goes along the stream is one of the busiest in the country. There's a train about every 20 minutes. So be really, really careful walking along the rail lines because there's trains all the time.
Yeah, we even when I'm guiding, we won't even walk on the railroad tracks. It's kind of like this, like, you know, as a kid, we always walk railroad tracks, throw rocks down the tracks. You know what I mean? But here in PA, they take that serious. We try to discourage any tracks because that like it's just so there's just too many trains on it. And it's dangerous and you can get in trouble. So, you know, I definitely just kind of steer away from walking on the tracks at all, especially crossing the railroad bridges. It's no good, no good. But cool. Let's move on to Spring Creek. Spring Creek's kind of like my heart, man. I love Spring Creek. It is just a fabulous stream in central PA. It's known for its fisherman's paradise. I think it's one of the original catch and release or fly fishing areas. Pretty cool spot. Like those other streams, you know, it has fabulous tributaries, fabulous headwaters, Class A streams, brook trout and browns, some wild rainbows mixed in too. You know, it's just a really nice Spring Creek limestone infused, creek. And one thing that makes spring, so if you're from Pittsburgh or this area, it's creek, it's not creek. And I spelled it wrong. Sorry, it should be Spring Creek. I apologize for that. But so Spring Creek has this cool kind of, it doesn't have crazy long, I think it's like 20 some miles long, the stream itself, but it doesn't have a crazy big drainage. So it comes up quick and it goes down quick. It really holds its water well. And if you see on the bank too, if you look at the photo there, you don't see really like a high water mark. You know, it is its watermark kind of. You know, and when I look at people's photos of like a big fish or whatever, you know, I immediately look at the background to see like how much water, you know, you can kind of see that zone of how high the water gets. And if you don't see really, it's just like grass right up the stream. A lot of times maybe that's more of a Spring Creek or maybe a tailwater. So, you know, it's kind of a sneaky thing, you know, to look at pictures and kind of see what kind of fishery those people are fishing in. But, you know, so when things blow out, Spring Creek might be fishable in 12 hours or maybe a day or maybe 6 hours. I've seen it bump up to, you know, dirty high and be fishing well within, you know, half a day. So it's a really cool stream, really cool stream. It is managed as catch and release, all tackle for most of its length. There's a fly fishing no wade area at the Fisherman's Paradise, and it has a lot of really good access. I'll kind of talk about it here in a minute. But if you're talking about bugs on Spring Creek, man, we're talking about scuds. That's my fly of choice would be a Waltz worm or a scud fly for sure. Just so much of that in Spring Creek. Even if like you just grab the gravel on the bottom and shake your hands and let the water and dust sift through, you just see how many little scuds that are in that thing. It's just crazy. And it's tributaries, like I said, just have some tight fishing opportunities, but have some nice fish in them as well. It's a bug factory. There's just so many bugs. It has a nice sulfur hatch. It has a lot of blue-winged olives, a lot of rainy day blue-winged olives on Spring Creek. I remember having some. I remember it was early. What was it? Early June or late May, and we had this crazy thunderstorm. Hard, slow day. We had this crazy thunderstorm. Kind of went in the brush as the thunder and lightning passed by, and man, I remember seeing this sulfur hatch. It was just hard to believe how many sulfurs come out of that thing at times. The fish just go wild for them. Those little comparadun sulfurs are great to fish on Spring Creek. But yeah, so we move downstream and we have kind of the upper part is kind of a place called Spring Creek Park with plenty of access. You move downstream, there's an area called Rock Road with tons of good pull-offs and just areas there. Then we go to kind of a little bit bigger water called Benner Springs. It's Shiloh Road, takes you over the hill to the first hatchery on the stream. There's some brushy areas upstream that have a lot of fish per mile, and that lower area is called the gorge through the penitentiary water, which was closed, I think it's like 10 years ago, maybe they opened up something like that. And it was, man, it was mega good when that thing opened, but it's still really good now. And you can fish that all the way clear down to Fisherman's Paradise. And that's a Pittsburgh thing. We say clear down. So clear across town, clear over to Philadelphia. You got to say clear. That's a direction. It's clear, or a measurement. So yeah, but moving downstream, this is that Rothrock property on the bridge that crosses. Really, really cool area here. I call this the S Bend. I remember this morning, it was, I think it was May. It was that overcast, foggy morning. Got there, 6 a.m. Just, one of those mornings where it's just like you're happy to be alive. You know what I mean? Just happy to be alive and be out there. And I came in on the left side here through that crazy jaggers, another Pittsburgh word, those jaggers, rambles, briars, coming through, scratching my waders all up. And I remember I walked up to about that little point that's on the right side, halfway up there. Caught a fish or two, and I saw this like glowing red thing in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was like some trash or something in the water. And then I realized, oh, it's like a huge carp. And then I realized it was a brown, and that thing was so freaking big. And that's still to this day. This had to be 8 years ago or something, bunch. To this day, that was the biggest fish I saw in Spring Creek. I casted to it. It looked once, I casted to it again, and it went under the bridge, and I never saw it. I went back like 3 days in a row, never saw it again. But there is big fish. It was big. It was a nice leg size fish. So moving downstream, this is just above Fisherman's Paradise, above the no wade stretch. It's awesome little pocket water that the fishing game. I think they kind of put in some rocks and stuff, some wooden diverters to give us some nice structure for those fish to hide and live in. And there's a ton of fish per mile. Man, you see those trees on the left and right overhanging, anywhere that there's shadows, that's where you want to fish on Spring Creek. Any of those shadows, especially in the summer, because this thing gets hammered, man. It gets fished, it gets trafficked, but there's fish. They will eat. You just gotta, not spook them and put your fly in front of them. Oh, I've noticed a lot of times, I swear, the fish know where like the trails are, where you come down into the water, and they sit right where the trails are. So right when you enter the water, they know you're there, so they won't eat, like they spook off. So fish where the trails come down. I swear there's always fish there.
Hey Josh, I had a question. Could you speak a little bit more about what you mean by the no wade section? Yeah, I think we have some people that haven't fished it before and don't have an idea of what that looks like.
Sure. Just downstream of this is what we call Fisherman's Paradise. It's where the second hatchery is on the stream. The water's a little bigger. It gets some springs, and there is a stretch. I'm not sure. I don't think it's even a mile long. It might be. It's pretty short. It's called Fisherman's Paradise that has a no wade zone, and you just stand on the bank and fish. It has kind of like nice manicured lawn. There's like nice picnic tables. The fishing game, I think it's Fish and Boat Commission, Fishing Game Commission is station. One of their stations is right there. And it's a nice big parking lot, nice access. There's a lot of walking trails. If my wife will come and she'll walk the trail. Nice gravel, safe area in between here and that Benner Springs parking lot upstream. It's just kind of a cool area. Good spot. And from Fisherman's Paradise downstream is what we call what's that called? Axeman. Sorry, brain fart. Axeman area, and that is where the USGS, the second USGS, is on the stream, and that's a good spot too. Kind of moving downstream, and then you get to the Bellefonte to Milesburg is what we call the second area of the stream, kind of the lower portion. I think it's like 3 miles long. And this is kind of the cooler stretch. So it'll fish a little bit longer, a little bit later into the season, into that kind of June. I love fishing Spring Creek in that June terrestrial season, kind of skinny water, and the water's still safe. So there's some springs in Bellefonte. There is Buffalo Creek, that is kind of a freestone Spring Creek limestone kind of thing. And then there's Logan Branch, that is a crazy Spring Creek. And there is something called Big Springs. It's like, I think it's the municipal water for Bellefonte. And that is where, a lot of cold water comes into the creek. So it's just just awesome. Cool stuff. But any questions on Spring Creek? Spring Creek and at. And that is just about when it goes into, as like just at the lower end. And you see it's a little wider there. It's not crazy wide, but it's nice. And it sometimes it pumps. That down there at 400 or 500 CFS is cooking. You know, it's hard to wade, but those fish move to the edges. It's definitely an edge fishery. You just fish everywhere. It's majority wild brown trout and a few random escapee rainbows and a couple wild rainbows here and there too. Kind of a cool mix.
Hey,
But it does get packed sometimes.
hey, Josh,
Yeah.
from the meeting hall here. Folks fished Spring Creek. It's highly recommend it. So Spring Creek, from Corning, you can be on Spring Creek in just a little north of 2 hours. So of the streams that Josh has talked about so far, you can definitely fish that on a day trip from Corning. Highly recommend it. Josh, one of the things you didn't mention is that the entire stream is catch and release. And part of the reason is that there's some kind of a toxins in the water. And so it's not a really good place to poach fish because you could eat those fish and die. So
I've still seen it a good few times though, man. I remember this one kid was putting them in his backpack. I don't know what the heck he's doing with them, but they still get him out of there, which is crazy.
for those of us that worked for Corning, there was a Corning facility in State College. There was a factory there. And so Spring Creek was not too far away from the factory. And I know I was accused of scheduling meetings around hatches. And I have to confess now that I'm retired that was an accurate.
You were killed.
I was definitely scheduling meetings so I could be done by the hatch. Go ahead, Josh.
That's good stuff. But so Spring Creek, how we will actually fish at a time. So this is a goofy group here. This is kind of my bachelor party, and I made a rule: we're not allowed to fish more than 2 feet from each other, just so we were all miserable together and hit rods together, and just for fun, just jokes. But just to see if we can do it and catch fish, and we can. It's just crazy. There's so many fish in that thing, and like they spook, but they don't. So they kind of hold up in these little pods, especially in the winter. They kind of get potted up. And what I found out a really good way to fish the stream is walk through the hole and get them all moved around and then fish through. And they kind of are all scattered and will kind of eat that way, which is kind of wild. But yeah, it's just a great fishery. Great fishery. A lot of scuds, a lot of blooming dollars, midge, good midge. Does have that good sulfur hatch. And yeah, just a good overall stream. And then we move to one of the crown jewels of PA, Penns Creek. Penns Creek. This is just a fabulous stream. It just has a different feel than those other streams I mentioned. Spring Creek has it's kind of an urbanish, just smaller feel. The Little J has that kind of big west feel, but man, Penns Creek is just a cool wild river, just full of good sized fish. It's just awesome fishery. And I would say this is, besides like that Kettle Creek, First Fork, Young Women's, those are bug factories, but Penns is really a bug factory. There's just so many bugs on this thing where you can get, this is like a biologist's dream where you can get those, people say March Browns and then gray fox, and like most of us are like, oh, that's pretty darn similar, but those guys are just nuts about the exact bug and the exact, because it's there, and that's what makes it really cool. And that's it just has just this cool footprint of just so many bugs and so many hatches that are just dense, and it's known for its green drake hatch, which brings people from all over the country. I kind of fished near that time this year. Unfortunately, a lot of the river was pretty darn warm actually that time of year. It got pretty warm. But yeah, that's just a crazy, crazy cool hatch. People fish them like into the night with headlamps and stuff. Has a great sulfur hatch. Legitimately has those Hendricksons and red quill. Just everything. Just awesome. But Big River, it's like 30 miles, and 30 plus comes from a cave. Its source, Penns Creek Cave, which is like an attraction. You can actually go in the cave and feed the trout in there. There's some huge ones. And then downstream of that, there is some private water on the upper end. There's some clubs. Someone asked about that. I've never fished them, know much about them, but there is some clubs up there. And it has some good tributaries that are actually really good. Some other ones comes from caves as well. Just cool, just a cool area. But if I was to fish a bug on Penns, man, stoneflies are a good fish mover on Penns Creek. They'll get a fish to move out of their spot a lot of times to go eat. But rubber legs, thin body stones, sometimes small, like sometimes I even fish small stones, like 12s, 14s, just like real little rubber legs. But sometimes the big ones work well too. Just a good bug. And there's some good fish on Penns too. We once in a while we'll find a nice sneaky big one on Penns. And like I said, the hatches are pretty crazy. This is where I really learned about the green drakes, how they start in downstream and work upstream. Kind of as the water warms up upstream, they kind of progress upstream. And maybe it's a week, maybe it's 2 weeks. It's kind of cool how it's prolonged on temperatures, and that's kind of what makes those bug hatch over time. So it might be down at Glen Iron or Cherry Run or whatever, and up at Coburn, it's nowhere to be seen yet. But it's kind of neat how it kind of progresses upstream. And starting up high, there's a little bit of fishing opportunity on the upper end of the stream by like Spring Mill. That's kind of the upper end. From the cave down to the town of Coburn, it's stocked fishing up there with many wild trout as well. There's some random wild rainbows, but it's majority of brown trout and some stocked fish, some stocked rainbows too. That's some nice water. And there's some fishing pull-offs above Coburn, has some access in that area. And you go downstream to where we call kind of the gorge stretch, where it kind of gets its more limestone influence at Spring Creek. It has a stream called Pine Creek that has a tributary called Elk Creek that enters in the town of Coburn. And that's kind of really where the majority of my fishing begins, from there downstream. And that's where some of the regulations, there's a slot limit regulation where you can't take a fish between certain size, and there's some catch and release areas down there. It's just great fishing. I fished with, this is Tom Doman of Penns Creek Guide Service. Him and I went out a day, and just awesome, just great fishery, man. Big water, big fish. I'd say of those three streams, Little J, Spring, and Penns has the biggest average size fish, I would say. There's a lot of those small fish, which indicates a good fishery as well, but there's just nice average size fish. So from Coburn, you have access there. Downstream of Coburn is called Tunnel Road, and that goes down until a parking lot, and you can enter kind of some state forest land and walk the railroad bed. There's not a railroad track there anymore, but there's a railroad grade that kind of takes you down, and you can kind of go around the mountain and enter from a place called Ingleby, which is the next access, and then Poe Patty, which would be the one below that. And all that is just awesome fishing. Clear down through Cherry Run, even lower on the stream. And that is just kind of a overview of Penns Creek. I don't know, does anyone have questions on Penns?
Yeah, one question, a point you might want to mention is the slipperiness and whether you need a waiting staff on any of these streams.
Oh yeah, dude, Penns pushes, man. I mean, I recommend a waiting staff for anybody. And rubber boots are slippery. Rubber boots with studs are less slippery. Felt boots are, even less slippery. Felt boots with studs are even less slippery. I always like, if someone is only fishing one day and not going to other streams, those felt are, a fair option because they are safe on those rocks. But, rubber and being clean with your stuff, and we'll talk about that at the end. You know, I want to recommend felt, but just it's hard to when people, you know, when we know about the invasive species, but having waiting staff is definitely important to be able to.
Especially in this stream, probably, right? Out of the three.
Oh yeah, Little J, man, that cranks too, and lower
That one too.
Spring Creek freaking cranks. Like I was guiding it. What was it, like 4 weeks ago? Just at the turn of October, and man, it was cooking. Like it gets moving, which is cool. And one thing I will say with water volume, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is like, so I'm kind of a nerd with these things. I'll look at the USGS. So USGS is the US Geological Service survey or whatever, and they have these stations on streams that kind of look at the current CFS, and you can also look at other things like dissolved oxygen, dissolved solids on some stations. And they give you the ability to look over years too. So you can see this chart. I don't know, whoever hasn't looked at it, but I'm kind of, you know, so I understand where we're all at. But this chart, so you can kind of see like the water for averages of years and averages of the month. And they kind of give you these lines and data. It just kind of gives you a cool view of the streams to see how, you know, maybe March it's here and then May it bumps up another 50 or 100 CFS depending on the stream. But the year of, I think it was 2019 or 20, it was kind of crazy. While I was fishing Spring Creek, I was like, and guiding it, I was like, man, there's just more volume than normal, like a lot more volume. And I kind of looked at the graph and I was like, it's like way above average for like a lot of the year here. I was like, this is weird. And then one of my clients was like, yes, because Penn State's not, there's none of the people are there. They're all at home because of COVID. And they're not using all that water in the groundwater. I was like,
No kidding.
huh, interesting. Maybe that is something. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But it was kind of this weird. I was like, oh, wow. And it fished really well. You know, it fished really good. You know, water's important. You know, I don't, you know, taking water. I mean, we need it to live and drink and make crops or whatever. But, you know, for fishing, it's important too. But I'm sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No problem.
Getting back to the answer, yes, having a waiting staff is definitely just recommended on any stream. You know, the older we get, even my knees at 33, my knees hurt at times, and I wish I had one sometimes too. But yeah, Penns is an awesome stream. Highly recommend it. I don't fish this one as much because it is kind of getting to that farther striking range from Pittsburgh. It's like 3 hours plus, and then you talk about a 30-minute drive over the gravel hill to over the mountain. You know, that's, you know, getting at 3.5, 4 hours. I guide it occasionally. I love fishing. I wish it was closer because I would fish it all the time. But awesome place. There is a great guide service there called Feathered Hook. The fly shop there has some awesome, really good guides. Tom Doman's a great guide. TCO has a great guide service for the Spring Creek area. There's some other individual guides like, you know, George Daniel and Dom Swintowski, and you know, Pennsylvania has just a great resource of awesome people. I like to guide too, but go with those other people. They're probably better than me anyways. Okay.
Hey, Josh, can I give you some comments from the meeting room here?
Yes, please.
Okay. For those of you, so Penns Creek is my favorite central Pennsylvania stream, but for those of us who live in this area, I just really like to encourage you, those 3 streams that Josh just highlighted are in the State College area. We could reach them on a day trip, but it's way better to go down base out of State College or that area and fish those streams. Penns is big water, Little J's big water. Spring Creek is smaller, a lot more tractable, but gets a little more pressure. But all those fisheries, what's amazing about the State College area is there's some other smaller streams that maybe Josh will mention, like Fishing Creek and others, Bald Eagle, so that generally you can go there with confidence that one of those is going to be fishing on. So oftentimes weather can wipe them all out, but but you have a really good chance if you base out of state college, if you have a camper, base out of a hotel, that there's great fishing there. And what's really cool is those are wild trout waters. It's that there's stocked fish in them, but you've got a really good chance of catching wild fish.
Absolutely. It's some beautiful fish of that too. Some really nice quality fish. Not, just clean looking, pure strain. Sometimes you get a mixed match of strain, and that's what's cool too. You catch a fish on the little J, and it might have been intermingling with stock fish over time. It's spawning, and you kind of get these different patterns. And then you go to Spring Creek, where it hasn't been stocked in a long time. You'll get fish that look different, and then you go over to Big Fishing Creek, and man, they look way different. It's just kind of cool to see those fish and how they look. And I have some crazy theories about that stuff too, which I won't get into, but pretty cool. So moving on to the one that, man, it's hard for me to share about this one. I can't give too much, but it's a good stream. The Kish Creek. Kish Creek. It is 24, 25 kind of miles long. It is just south of State College, south and east of State College, a little way. It is a good bug factory too. I like fishing hares, ears. This is kind of a pattern that I have, kind of called the +1. Looks like a Rainbow Warrior, Surveyor, just a little tractor pattern, but it's a good bug on that stream. It feels like a freestone stream, but it's limestone influence. It has some really cool, sneaky spring creeks that go into it. So it gives it a really nice, just good water. This is a cool fish that my friend Heather caught a couple years ago, fishing like middle of summer. Just, you see that water, it's just good color, just a cool place, and it stays cool. There's, like I said, there's some spring creeks in it. Sometimes it does get warm, but if you go on one of those months where the low temperatures in the evenings are getting into the 40s and 50s, man, you got good fish in there. And we do catch some good ones out of there too.
Holy shit.
One I caught not too long ago, but won't share that for too long. And it's good water. It's the kind of water that I feel comfortable with. Pockets. What does that mean to me? Pocket water means to me many opportunities to catch trout, because the more pockets there are, the more fish chances I'm going to have at a fresh fish. Fishing a big hole, I throw my fly through and maybe there's 50 fish in it, but the first cast, most of them see your fly. When you have pockets, that's just another chance at a fresh fish each pocket, if that makes sense. But kind of cool. And that's kind of a lot of the information that I'm writing about in my book that will come out. Oh man, I hope it's out next October-ish. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, enough of that.
Go ahead.
Josh,
Yes, sir.
I'm interested in the wall on the side of the stream. Is that from an old mill or something?
So I talked with some of my clients about that. I wasn't too sure, and they call that like man, someone can help me with this, like a CCP or CC something.
Oh, the
CCC.
conservation.
Yeah, it's that. And there's a lot of Pennsylvania actually has these walls. And it's cool, kind of cool. And I guess it's a lot of years old. I mean, look at the trees that are growing in it. It's tons of years old. But it's crazy to think someone put all those rocks there. It's just wild. And that just gives the stream, the more of those big boulders that fall into the stream, the better the structure it becomes. Bigger rocks just mean bigger dig outs for fish to hide in. It's just a plus. But there's a bunch of those on that stretch of the river. Pretty cool. It has, I kind of mentioned of some of its streams, it has tributaries that are Class A and have just a little bit of fishing opportunities, but good volume of water. I think, man, at least 2 or 3 of them come out of caves that I'm aware of, which is really neat. It's just cool to see a stream just pop out of a cave. We knocked on one of the properties landowners, and they actually let us. We didn't fish, but we went and looked at the cave and actually swam underneath and kind of came up into this tiny little room where the water is just kind of boiling out of this deep hole. It's just really cool. Pennsylvania is so cool. It's just so neat. But just pocket water galore, good, nice. It does get a stocking, and it does have a nice head of brown trout as well. I don't remember catching too many. Yeah, it does have some wild rainbows, but few.
This is not a question came in. This is not a catch and release stream, right? This is just general regs.
No, that's general regs. The Fish and Game have been on this stream and a couple other ones. I won't mention which ones, but they're on a couple others this year while I was guiding, and they're doing some surveys with our clients and guests, asking them about the fishery and if the Fish and Game should change some regulations. And some of those where only catch rainbows and release brown trout, or only or no stocking, or catch and release year round. So there was kind of some cool. It was nice to see Pennsylvania having thoughts like that too. Try to love these wild trout possibly a little better, because they are a great resource for us and we love them. You know what I mean? So it's kind of cool to see. And maybe it is just a catch and keep fishery, but I see a lot of fishermen, putting fish back, which is great too. But
Yep.
once in a while people eat fish too. That's part of life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, it's a good fishery. But I'm not going to share too much more about that stream, but I'm going to share my favorite seasons on those ones we talked about. March, I really like Penns Creek in March. It's big, it's mean, it's scary, it's intimidating. It keeps everybody away, or most crazy people, or just us crazy people are there. It has nice volume. Fish are coming out of winter. They're happy-ish. They just want to eat a lot of the time. I like fishing Penns in March. It can be intimidating at 600, 700 to 1,000 CFS. Impossible to cross in a lot of places. But those fish will just kind of be in those close edges and seams. Sometimes when rivers are up, it makes it where, okay, let me kind of backtrack. The J at like 400, fish can be anywhere. The J at like 1,000, the fish are where they're going to be on those close edges. So sometimes almost when rivers are higher, it makes it not easier, but you're only going to fish just certain water, and you're covering fish. Where when streams are kind of at their medium flow, almost, or tougher in a sense, because the fish are more spread out, if that kind of makes sense a little bit. But I kind of see a difference in where the fish are between, let's say, once they do their thing here in the fall and kind of get ready to go to sleep for the year, it's kind of what I kind of call it. They, you kind of have those first blue and olives, and maybe that winter stones in January and February. And then March, you get maybe a couple random bugs, and then you get that first random hatch, and then the stream seems to kind of wake up, and the fish kind of seem to wake up. But to me, it's not when that water is kind of like solid in that 55 range, where those fish really kind of migrate out of just their wintering holes to kind of move everywhere in the stream, is when the numbers of fish kind of repopulate those skinnier areas. Those fish might move into the skinny areas to feed in March, and when the water's cooler, dictating on and depending on bug activity. The sun might warm the stream, the bugs start popping, the fish slide up into those more skinny feeding lanes, and then 4 o'clock comes and the sun kind of crests, and those fish quickly depress back into those slower soft spots. But then Cinco de Mayo rolls around. My favorite. If someone asks like, "What's your favorite day of the year?" The fish, like Cinco de Mayo. That is like, we know the water's warmer, safe. Still, not too warm, but the water's safe. Bugs are happening, fish are happening. Those fish are all in that A water. They're not kind of retracting to those winter holes. That's kind of like when the streams are really alive, in my opinion. So April, I like fishing Spring Creek, and I like June on Spring Creek too. Fishing tricos, fishing those ant flies and terrestrials, beetles. That's awesome fishing on Spring Creek. This is actually, I think, Big Springs, the photo here, kind of a neat fishery in the like Carlisle area. And then one we didn't talk about is Big Fishing Creek. I like that in May. Big Fishing Creek seems to stay cooler longer early season. So I kind of wait to go there a little later. Big Fishing Creek's a tough stream. Of those, of Kish, Spring, Little J, and Fishing Creek, I would say Fishing Creek's the most quote technical one. They're really spooky and they can be very difficult, but it's very rewarding to catch those fish. They're beautiful, mostly wild brown trout. Lower end has some stocked fish, some random escapee fingerling rainbows. I think it might have a wild rainbow here or two. And it does have some really nice brook trout too, which is cool. That we've been catching those kind of in the narrow stretch, which is the kind of the middle of the river. There's some, the higher up you get, the more brook trout it seems in the narrows. But
Josh,
other-
another question real quick came in. When you're fishing Penns Creek in March, you targeting like a really warm day, hopefully, or after, and you're getting out in the afternoon?
yeah, it would be more water volume to me. If it's really, really high, then I'm not going. But that kind of, I like that 600-700 CFS where it's up nice, it's moving. But yeah, if it's freezing cold, I'm not out there. I used to be crazy and try to go out at 30 degrees. But if it's, I like to be comfortable in the 40s if possible. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And later in the afternoon when things are warming up is when it gets better, probably, huh?
Yeah. So kind of some honorable mentions. I'm not going to say anything too sneaky, but these are kind of the ones. If you search Pennsylvania, we have Pine Creek, which is a good stocked fishery, has slate and cedar run, tributaries, good tributaries to a good stream. Remember, we talk about that. The Delaware River is a tailwater. Lackawanna is a pretty cool river in the eastern part of the state. The Latort the Latort area, was that Cumberland Valley, has a bunch of crazy good streams, more like original streams, we should say, for originators and fly fishing too, and a lot of the stuff that we do. And there's some legends still living that guide and fish those areas. Big Springs and Falling Springs kind of fall in that same general area too. Big Fishing Creek, it's actually Fishing Creek. There is no such thing. I don't think it's Big Fishing Creek, but we call it that. Bald Eagle, Slate and Cedar Run, tributaries of Penns, Little Lehigh, Kettle Creek, First Fork Creek, and Young Women's up near you guys, which as well are really cool bug factories. Stockfish, there is some random wild fish in some of those streams. There's brook trout in most of the tributaries, and they just have good fishing. I think that what the First Fork has, that Keystone Select stretch above George B. Stevenson Dam, which is a really nice area. And I could talk all day about this stuff. And there's lists and lists of other ones that I won't put online. Just to respect those streams. Streams with friends are good, but streams I think people need to think about them too. I think there's kind of a fine line. That's just my thought on that. But so another thing before I sign off, I want to talk about this time of year. This time of year right now, I do a lot of guiding in central Pennsylvania. Most of it's from March, April, May, and a little bit of it into June. I might do a random trip in the summer on safe times when water is safe. And what do I mean by safe? Once that water gets above 66, 67, especially in the morning, that's getting too warm. And this time of year, the thing that we need to know is spawning trout. Trout do their thing this time of year, especially those wild fisheries. We want to, and we have different thoughts on it. Some people, there's no right or wrong, but my thought on that is to just let them spawn. Don't mess with them. That's just kind of how. And I like to share that, but I don't like to throw that in people's faces. You know what I mean? I try to lead through example. I don't do any more guiding. Kind of stop at the beginning part of October. Once I see them starting to change colors a little bit, I see maybe that first red, and kind of wrap it up for the year. I just think it's a good practice to just let them do their thing. But I don't like to give too much opinion on that. But I feel like as someone who maybe a person listens to out there, maybe someone hears that and just respects that. But what do you think about that, guys? Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely.
I think so. I think there's still fishing to be had. You fish for stockfish, and some people still fish for wild fish. Just don't target the reds or stuff. But I try to just stay off the streams more or less altogether if I can. But Yeah. So I'm Josh. Like I said, my name's Josh Miller, and there's my information. There's my phone number, my email address. I put some videos online. I haven't been doing videos because I'm working on that book that I'm, so crazily mentally exhausting working on, but I love it. So I haven't been doing too many videos. Maybe after it comes out, I'll do more. And if anyone ever wants to learn a little bit more about our streams or take a guide trip, feel free to reach out. I'd love to share a day on the water with anybody. Right? It's
Josh,
honor.
you also guide for steelhead, correct?
I do. Steelhead's not my forte. And I'm the first to say that. I will do some guiding. We do some of Ohio and some in Pennsylvania. I might go tomorrow and do some fishing, maybe. Yeah, a little bit, not a ton. There's people that are better than that, than me at that. So if it's crazy. I kind of feel like I have my niche with doing the subsurface techniques, and that's kind of what I'm good at. So that's kind of what I try to stick with. Steelhead or trout, of course, but they're a little different as a migratory fish, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. On the Little J, in the hole below the bridge, they're there every day. So that's where I put my time in. So I know they're there, and if we can't catch them, it's on us. If we can't catch them in Erie, well, let me go back. If we can't catch them, it's on me as a guide. But in Erie, it's just that variable is, are they there? So that's why it's a little harder for me to want to guide that, even though I do, and I do love catching those big fish. It is fun. But yeah. Well, I appreciate you fine guys and ladies having me here, and I appreciate having me back. Hopefully someone learned something. Hopefully it was interesting at all. And is there any more questions or anything?
So questions from the hall here?
I'd like to ask a question. Josh, have you ever fished the yellow breeches?
Of course I have. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, beautiful stream. The known areas like the Allenberry Playhouse area. There's a TCO fly shops right there. There's another one called Precision Fly. TCO has a great guide service. Jake Vilwalk out of there. Just awesome stream. Has wild trout and stock trout. Yeah, great fishery.
And the other question I got, out of all the nice flies I saw, the one fly that I've seen fishermen use in Pennsylvania, and I'm not really a big Pennsylvania fisherman, but I wonder, where was your greenie weenie?
Yeah, that's a good fly, man. Absolutely, that's weenie. Dude, I couldn't tell you how many times in a pinch and remember what we said, the green, the chartreuse on Little J, and all the streams, of course, but that green fly in the middle of summer, or at June, when the fish all the hatches are kind of done, and those inchworms or whatever it is, man, that green weenie can pull us out of a bind at times. I remember fishing on Spruce Creek. I had these two brothers that I guide a bunch each year, Bob and Bill. They're in their 70s. They're a hoot. I love them, and we were having a tough day, man. Those fish were biting lightning fast. It was early June. They've had pressure since March, April, May, June. Everybody's on that river every day. You know what I mean? And those fish were lightning fast. Those bites were so quick. And, I'm just like, we missed one. We missed two, and it'd be first and second cast. And that's a whole topic we can talk about in itself. But when you're fishing for those spooky fish, it's literally first and second cast. It's happening or it's not. And it was happening, but they're so quick. It was really hard to pick up on those bites because those fish were eating what we call on a reaction strike. When the flies are literally hitting the water and falling before you even make connection, they're smoking it. They're eating it so quick. And it's really hard to pick up on that when your technique isn't super refined yet. So, as a guide, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I going to do? So knowing that, I went to a dry dropper. Let me start catching a couple, but the fish didn't really want the dry dropper technique. They wanted it kind of falling. And we were got a couple, but they're still fast bites. So I thought about it, and I went to that green weenie, man. And those fish just would hold that fly a little longer because I don't know if it's the size of it or the softness of it, but we turned a fair day into a great day. But sorry, just getting on a tangent.
Well, from what you just told me, Josh, I'm just confident now that that is your secret fly, that you're not gonna tell a lot of people.
You're never gonna know, are you?
Amen, brothers.
Amen. Well, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. Well, any more questions before we wrap up?
Any other questions here from the room? And any,
Yeah, just trying to make sure we covered everything in the chat. And by the way, we had a couple people on the chat. We had one from Southwest Missouri. We had another one from Arkansas, calling and checking in to watch your talk. So very well received. But there was one other question on what fly rods would you use for all of these streams? I think but I'll let you go ahead.
With if I'm doing
Like
the
weight, yeah.
Yeah, if I'm doing the subsurface technique, I like between a 2 and a 4 weight rod, 10 foot, 10 and a half. 11 foot to me is it's a tool, but for me, it's just a little bit too long. It's just a little bit on my arm and my shoulder all day to swing around. So that like 10 to 10 and a half is kind of what I like to fish. And when I'm fishing, even like if I'm doing swinging wet flies, 10 foot 4 weight's a great rod to have. For heavy water, if I'm fishing big deep bugs and fishing those big stone flies and the water's like, cranking at 600, 700 to 1,000, having a stiffer rod, a 4 weight or even a 5 weight will help move a bulky fly deeper in the water and help penetrate a fish much better than a softer 2 weight or 3 weight. If I'm fishing summer or early, late spring, early summer, and the water's a little skinnier, having a 2 or 3 weight to fish lighter tippet to protect light tippet is kind of what I go for. If I'm fishing dry flies, that 4 weight, 3, 4, 5 weight, depending on how big my fly is. I'm fishing those big green drakes, man, I'm fishing heavy tippet and a stout rod. But that's just kind of what I'm doing. Thanks for the question. Anything else?
so anything else on Zoom?
No.
Cool. And Bob, you're watching Facebook.
Yep. Nothing else
So-
there.
So I just wanted to say, Josh, I said at the beginning, this is a bit of an experiment. This is the very first time we met in person. So we have 7 in the room here. It's hard to see the whole community because we had 20 people on Facebook and we had somewhere around 10 on Zoom. So some of those overlap.
Yeah.
But really we had in the range of 35 people participating, which is pretty good for a club meeting.
Great.
So I just want to say that our expectation is the December meeting going to be an in-person speaker. And so we're kind of advance the experiment, kind of work our way back. Thank you for all that came out today.
Of course.
Also, I just want to throw a big thanks that in order to do these virtual meetings, it takes a shitload of work. And it's way more work than it normally would be to do a fly fishing club meeting when a speaker shows up, brings their PowerPoint, we plug it into a projector and we're rolling. So in the room here, we have all kinds of technology, cameras and projectors, but also TC Owens is doing the bulk of the work, which is damn cool, from Ithaca. So TC, thank you. He's running the whole live stream and hosting the Zoom session and all that from there. And thanks to Josh, we went through a rehearsal, and so there's a lot of work that goes on to do this. So
I did
thanks.
sleep through the rehearsal.
What's that?
I did sleep through half the rehearsal.
You did?
We were not supposed to tell you that though.
Oh, yeah.
Bob called me and
TC said I didn't have to show up.
no, I took my alarm, like, I don't even think it went off. He called me 15 minutes. It was 10:15. I was like, oh my God, I slept in.
Yeah, he neglected to tell you he drove 20 hours the night
Right,
before.
exactly.
So,
Yeah, I did drive from Oklahoma, but well, I would like to, maybe next year, I would like to come up and maybe do it in person and meet everybody. That would be fabulous. Maybe after my book comes out or something, I could come up and talk about it a little bit
That'd
or
be
something.
great.
That'd be
That'd
awesome.
be way cool.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe
have
do
you
a little
back.
clinic, maybe.
We'll do a day fishing the day before at Rainbow Paradise and have fun, and then we'll do it. That'd be great.
that does sound great.
Heck yeah. Well, thanks guys. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
So I think what we'll do is we'll close down the virtual session. For those of us here, we can hang around and enjoy a beer and so forth. So thank you, everyone. And
Hey, before you leave,
yes,
got Baxter on. Haven't seen him in a long time. He's on
Baxter
Zoom.
Rhodes.
Yeah,
Baxter, welcome, buddy.
face from the past.
Oh, that's cool.
He's in Florida?
No, he's in North Carolina.
Good to see
All
you.
right. Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Josh.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
You too. Stay safe.